In a
Okay.
row, yeah. All right, so here's my first one.
Yeah.
The Lakers add Montrezl Harrell, Dennis Schroder, Wes
Hmm.
Matthews, Marc Gasol. They keep KCP. They
Right.
lose number 28, Rondo, Green, Bradley, Howard, McGee. Was this the only contender that actually got better? Because I feel like they're better.
They are better with the caveat, because I've thought a lot about this. They are better. Schroder was a great upgrade, really, over Rondo. And I know we both love playoff Rondo, but he wanted too much money, and Atlanta overpaid to get him. And we all understand why that happened, because if you're Atlanta, you have to overpay. And that's how you get Rondo to go there. So that's fine. I love Marc Gasol. He might be one of my favorite NBA players of all time because he's so cerebral. He's one of the best defensive. If you watch him play defense, he's one step ahead of everybody else. He knows what's going to happen before it happens. And that he's just a great defensive player. Now,
and he's an adult.
What's that?
He's an adult compared to JaVale and Dwight. He's a professional.
100%. Such an adult. They won't have any problems with him. In fact, I already have people in Philly saying to me, well, what do you think about Dwight Howard? I'm like, yeah, good luck, fellas. Because he's nuts, you know? And Gasol, now, he did fall off a cliff. His three-point shooting, especially in the bubble, was just horrendous. And more concerning, I think, he just doesn't want to shoot it anymore. Maybe he never wanted to shoot it to begin with. Remember, all the way back in Memphis, they made him shoot it, and then he got pretty good at it. But I think instinctively, it's not really something he wants to do. But I still love that. I love that signing. That to me was just fantastic. The only one I'm having a little pause on is Montrezl Harrell. Now, by getting Harrell and Schroder, you get the number 1 and number 2 top bench scores in the league last year. Do you realize that? The top 2 bench scores. So that's fantastic. That's great. But all the reasons the Clippers could not play Harrell down the stretch, won't some of those be the same reasons that the Lakers might have trouble playing him down the stretch? So that's my only pause. But I mean, the Lakers were the winners, but so were the Trailblazers.
Wait, hold on the Trailblazers, because I had 2 Laker points.
Okay.
On Harrell, I agree with you. It left me lukewarm, but on the other hand, great price, right? They're only paying
you stole him from the other guys. Yeah.
You stole him from the other guy, but also they've been pretty honest already about that. They're going to be really careful with LeBron and maybe even Davis too, the first 2-3 months of the season.
Right.
And at some point, like you mentioned, they got the 2 best bench scorers. They're going to actually be able to create offense, which they couldn't do last year if LeBron and
100%.
Davis weren't out there. They have these third game in 4 nights and some crappy city like Minnesota, and they'll be like,
right.
yeah, well, let's rest LeBron and we'll just run pick and rolls with Harrell the whole game. I thought the reason the Clippers had to get rid of him was you can't play him against the 2 teams you're trying to beat. You're trying to beat Denver and the Lakers.
The Lakers,
and he's unplayable. I think for the Lakers, he's somebody that can be back to what he was when he was really good, was a bench guy. I don't think he plays crunch time. You know, the Gasol Matthews switches for Green. That's great. Schroeder's really a more reliable version of Rondo Bradley, basically. The Gasol thing, I thought he looked done in the bubble. I got to be honest, especially going against my team. I don't know whether I'm overrating the bubble, and I think some guys just look bad in the bubble, and whether it's like, should we pour dirt on this guy, or if he's on a minimum salary, you're just asking him to play 15, 20 minutes against certain teams. And he's so smart. He's still good defensively. All the metrics back that up. All the other smart teams were trying to sign him. So that makes me think, all right, that's better than McGee.
Well, remember this too. Wouldn't you love him guarding Jokic for you when it matters?
Yes.
I mean, he's a great post defender. And here's the other thing. And I'm not making excuses for anybody in the bubble, but I do think we've underestimated the mental toll it took on many people, including Marc Gasol, whose parents were in Spain when the COVID was raging in that country. He couldn't get to them. He couldn't see them. He could talk to them. I don't think either one of them ever got COVID, but they were very much at risk. I think he had a lot of things on his mind, honestly. And again, I think his role with Toronto was enhanced. They needed more. Toronto needed him more than the Lakers do. Does that make sense? So what the Lakers need, I think he can provide. I love talking to him. I learn something every time I talk to him. And he's a really interesting guy in that he gets along great with his teammates. He can be tough on coaches if he doesn't think coaches are doing things the right way. He loved Nick Nurse. They got along great. But, go back in his history a little bit. he's had, and I don't mean to say he's a troublemaker or anything like that. I think he's just a really smart guy that's very honest with coaches when he thinks they're not doing the right thing. I think Frank Vogel will be fine with that. I think Frank will be perfect for that.
I think it was less important for the Lakers to get him, even though I think he's going to really help them. But a couple of the other teams that wanted him, the Mavericks,
right?
They kind of stood pat for the most part. They didn't take any huge swings. They moved some salaries around. They got James Johnson back, which I think they needed to do because they needed a Luka protector, which I think they knew after the playoffs. He's probably the toughest guy in the league. But I think Gasol really would have helped Dallas. I think the Lakers he'll help, but he's also a luxury for them, right? Deep down, they know, whatever he gives them is awesome, but they can survive if it turns out he's semi-washed up. He'll still be an awesome guy to have around and things like that.
Yeah,
they just seem more professional to me. I think they won in the bubble, despite that they had some nut jobs on that team. Even like Deion Waiters and JR.
Yeah,
it was.
Yeah, come on,
it
man.
was a very, kind of rowdy team, and I think now. Maybe Harrell is the only guy they have is a little bit of a character. Everybody else is gone.
Well, and I'll be interested to see how LeBron and Gasol do. I would think there would be a great mutual respect there. But I'll be interested to see how because again, if LeBron misses an assignment and starts yelling at the guy next to him, like Gasol's not going to put up with that. That's not how he rolls. And I think that'll be really good for the Lakers, honestly.
Yeah. And the other thing, Portland's going to have to be one of the teams they get through. Yeah. And that is somebody that gives them legitimate Nurkic insurance, And I think what they learned in the playoffs that year was ultimately when they really had to beat a good team, the McGee Howard guys those just weren't options. And
yeah, I mean, JaVale McGee's like one of those little fireworks you used to light off that like blew up for like 2 seconds, and you're like, wow, and then you go, wait, that's it, because he's tired now. He's got to go to the bench,
Yeah.
And some of that's physical stuff that he has. But
I think they're going to miss Rondo, but I also agreed that they couldn't keep him at the price. I think the funniest thing about the Lakers, first of all, the fact that I'm complimenting the Lakers is amazing, but I love that Magic Johnson did the tweet about what a job by Rob Pelinka, Executive of the Year. It's like you were literally driving a car over him.
Right.
15 months ago and then backing up the car over his lifeless body and then driving it over again and now trying to pretend that never happened. Like, what are you doing, Magic?
Yeah, but that's been going on for a while. That whole redo, that's been, hey, give, isn't it time to give Rob Pelinka some credit? I think it is.
I think it is.
It is.
Well, I mean, I still feel like I can't believe they gave up all they gave up for Davis when they were the only suitor and they were getting him in a year, but it worked out and they won the title. So he can't be criticized.
Yeah, what are you
going
to say? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think what he just did was really where we start really determining as a GM how he is. And those moves were good moves. They were solid across the board.
And I think you could make the case that they were the only contender that actually got better. But I guess that leads us to Portland. This is my next question. Because I'm a little more lukewarm on what Portland did than other people.
Oh, okay. All right.
Why does the NBA media love Neil O'Shea so much? You're a member of this media. Every year, it's like Neil O'Shea, it's a big party for everything he does. Here's what they did. They added Robert Covington.
Yeah, I like Robert Covington.
Me too.
Okay.
Harry Giles, he won't play when it matters. Derek Jones couldn't play for 4 rounds for Miami. Cantor was unplayable for the Celtics. They kept Carmelo, which I think is, in a weird way, kind of dangerous, even though I know he's an important background locker room guy.
I thought he earned it.
And then Rodney Hood for $21 million coming off an Achilles. They lost 2 picks. I guess if you're going to say, here's what they did, Covington is a crunch time guy for them. And their crunch time now is Nurkic, Covington, Trent, Lillard, McCollum is a nice crunch time. The problem for me with Covington, he's had some pretty severe no-shows in the playoffs. He was terrible for Philly against the Celtics that one year. Right. And I thought in the Lakers series, all the stuff he was supposed to be doing, he didn't really do in that series. So I haven't seen him come through. And why are people always passing him around like he's a Yankee swap Christmas gift?
Yeah, that is a tough thing. And I think it affects you when people keep trading you because you start to get comfortable in a place and then you're on the move again and it's hard to establish yourself. And I think defensively, he's had trouble because I think he's been injured. I was talking to a GM day before yesterday who said, I love Covington as long as he's finally healthy. And I said, well, why? What are we talking about there? And he said, no, it's just knick-knack. But when knick-knack follows you from every place and you can't be reliable night in and night out, when you're supposed to be a guy that's a perimeter defender that scares people, you got to be healthy to be able to do that.
And I know at least one team a year ago that was afraid to trade for him because of the medical stuff.
Yeah.
So whether he's going to be healthy or whatever, but I just think I like their 5 now, but they paid, they gave up 2 first-round picks. That 16th pick in this draft, that could have been Bay from Villanova. Like that actually was a pretty nice pick.
I'm excited to see him in the NBA, aren't you? And I don't follow the colleges as closely as I'd like because I'm trying to keep track of the NBA, but he just excites me. He's going to be fun.
So they're kind of all in with this team, which leads me to my third question. If you were doing your top 5 in the West right now, I think Portland's in the top 3. And you would probably have it Lakers, Clippers, Blazers, Nuggets, with Clippers, Blazers, Nuggets in some order. But
I'd have the Nuggets. I'd have the Nuggets above the Blazers.
Okay. Would you have the Nuggets ahead of the Clippers?
No, I thought so. The Nuggets are a little bit confusing. Some of the things they did. So, all along we heard that they got to keep 2 of their 3 big guys out of Plumlee, Grant, and Paul Millsap. They want to keep 2 of the 3, and the most important one, you could argue, was Grant. Now, from what I understand, from what I've been told, the reason he's not with them anymore is he wanted a bigger role. It wasn't just the money. He wanted a bigger role on that team. And I'm not sure, he was fantastic in the postseason. I get that. But going forward, who are your top 3 stars in your mind, in my mind, in your mind? It's the 2 obvious ones, Jokic and Murray. And then let's see what Michael Porter Jr. really is. And maybe for, Jeremy Grant, that's what tipped the scales. But they lost him and they lost Plumlee. And Plumlee's an easy punching bag. I get that. But he has value as a backup center. Now, I think they overpaid for him. And Denver probably didn't want to do that. But then they had to, they had to scramble a bit. They re-signed Millsap. I don't know how much Millsap has left. You were talking about Gasol. I think Millsap's similar there. He's in a similar position. You love his veteran presence. He's a great teammate. He does everything right. But how much can he still do is the question.
He looked a little spent in the playoffs, but I think he was still weirdly important. And it was also interesting the smart teams were after him too, right? Dallas, Boston.
Yeah.
You stumbled into my 4th question. We could go back to the 3rd one, but my takeaway was this question. Is Denver waiting until 22 or 23 to make their run? Because clearly they assessed it and said, well, even if we overpay to keep Jeremy Grant, we still don't have enough. We're not gonna beat these guys. We're probably better off. We have the RJ Hampton. Who knows if he's going to make, but we'll roll the dice with him. We have Porter. We give Porter a much bigger role. Here's my thing with Grant. I think, and this happens sometimes, and I remember writing about it 15 years ago. David West was the first guy for me. Everybody talked about how underrated David West was all the time. He's so underrated. And then he weirdly started to become overrated. Yeah. And there was this little 2-year stretch where,
that's what happened to Chris Middleton.
It's Chris Middleton. So this will happen from time to time. And I think with Grant, he was awesome as this 1-year rental at $9 million. But then people started to think he was indispensable. Like I thought he got demolished by the Lakers. And I think his defense I think people think he's this awesome 3-and-D guy. I'm not sure defensively he's that good. And then offensively is kind of where more of his value is, but you would never say he's like an elite scorer or anything.
Well, no.
LeBron toyed with him. Now, granted, that's LeBron. He's one of the 3 best players ever, but he had no chance against him. So if he can't guard LeBron, why am I paying him $60 million?
Well, see, you're sounding like Tim Connolly. You can understand why it went the way it did. And so I'm not criticizing them for letting him go. I understand the especially the financial implications of it. But it did end up catching them. Remember Torrey Craig? They had to pull back their offer on Torrey Craig. It was just a nice little piece. The problem with the Nuggets is they drafted way too well. I mean, they couldn't afford Malik Beasley anymore. That's why they had to trade him. And then Minnesota overpaid for him. But again, you have to because it's Minnesota. So you got to overpay. Just like, and I'm sure we'll get to this at some point, Charlotte overpays for Gordon Hayward. When you're in that market, you have no choice but to overpay for players like that. But Malik Beasley, and he's got some legal trouble. But I mean,
to say the least.
Yes. But I mean, I think he's a really good player. And you had to move on for him. And that's the problem Denver has when you draft so well. And Tim Connolly's drafted as well as anybody. So
my guess is they assessed this and said, we're not winning if we bring everybody back. We can buy some time with 1 year for Millsap. And really the way that we jump a level is if Porter is awesome.
If he is exactly what we hope he is. Yeah.
If
he's not Porter a jughead.
Right.
He's got to. He can't be a jughead every 3 out of 4 games, though.
Right.
So we'll see.
All right, we're gonna take a break, then talk about the top 5 in the West. All right, coming back. I mentioned top 5 in the West before. So it's Lakers, Clippers, and then you have Nuggets, Blazers. I think I might have Blazers, Nuggets because I think the Nuggets are a little worse. What's interesting is the Rockets drop out no matter how this Harden thing plays out. They just do. But the Suns.
Oh, they're so fun all of a sudden.
The Crowder signing, because I didn't like their 10th pick. I thought they should have traded back. I thought that was weirdly like front office malpractice. Just take the Celtics picks. You're going to get your guy at 14 anyway. Get all these extra picks. What are you doing? But then they get Crowder, who I thought was going to get severely overpaid by somebody, especially after the Marcus Morris for $64 million. Crowder, they get him for 3 for 30. Yeah, they're able to get Sarge back for 3 for 27. They got Chris Paul. Whether Jalen Smith makes it or not, he's at least could be like a 9th, 10th man. And then you just have to hope Booker keeps going up. The arrow keeps going this way. And that's potentially a top 5 team. So I was hard on Sarver with the trading a future first.
Right.
Just to basically be a playoff team. It's like, I don't want to be an 8 seed. But now after the Crowder thing, I'm like, if Booker makes a jump, could that be a top 5 team in the West? What do you think?
I think 5's a little high just because you're everything's got to break right. You do have to have Booker keep going. And Crowder on the Phoenix Suns is different than Crowder on the Miami Heat. Because Crowder on the Miami Heat has very specific roles. Remember early on, my God, he couldn't make a 3-pointer to save his life, but they could still roll them because he was tough, he was big, he could defend, he could bother people. And you had other people that could come in and shoot threes for you. They're going to be asking a lot more of him in Phoenix. Can he do it? I'm not 100% sure. So,
well, the one thing I like with him, and this is, I think Miami is going to really miss this. His underrated skill, and he did this in Boston too, was his ability you could go small with him at 4.
Yeah,
or he could play 3, and he could kind of vacillate. He was a Swiss Army knife. This was why when I was doing my book, I thought the case for Havlicek being a little higher than some of these other guys was he's the best at this at anyone. He could be a guard or a forward and be the best at either position. So you could basically build the rest of your team knowing that whoever we have, we could put Havlicek here or there. Crowder's not John Havlicek.
Yeah, no, not at all.
He allows you to basically have this malleability that I think they're really going to miss that. They didn't replace Mo Harkless is not the same guy that Crowder is in that respect, and they're going to miss it. So I think for the Suns, that's a nice little chess piece to have.
I agree, and I don't know if this is cutting into your 10 questions, but the most confounding thing about free agency for me was how many teams with the Miami Heat at the top of the list made decisions about players with an eye towards a future that may not exist. It just confounds me. This chase for Giannis, and I think that factored into why Jay Crowder isn't with the Miami Heat anymore. They overpaid Dragic for the 1 year that they gave him because I think they probably wanted Crowder to take a 1-year deal, a Giannis friendly deal. And I don't blame Crowder for not doing that. That's not his responsibility. And now they're in a big quandary here with Bam. Now, maybe Giannis is going to make it a moot point and sign the Supermax with Milwaukee by December 20th, I think, right? Or 21st, maybe. And then, but does that mean you still give up on Giannis? Or do you see one more year if he can, do it with Milwaukee? And then even though he signed the Supermax, he can always say, I want to move on. All these things. But man, you're playing with fire by leaving Bam Adebayo unsigned. I understand why they're doing it. And how long can you wait? Do you wait a whole nother year if you're Bam's agent? And if you're Bam, is that going to make you happy?
So I had that as a top 10 question.
Sorry. No. I'm killing you here.
No, this is perfect because this is a good one to audible into. I actually agree with that strategy if I'm Miami and Dallas, but for something you didn't bring up yet. I don't know if I had enough to beat the Lakers no matter what I did.
Understood.
So you still are able to stay relevant and be in the pack. And if something weird happens to the Lakers, if this is the year LeBron breaks down, if this is the year they get bad injury luck, whatever, you're still in the mix. But I just think Giannis is so special that if you really feel like you're in the mix for that dude. And I think it's Miami or Dallas if he leaves. I think it's one of those two teams. And Dallas is the smarter pick, as we've discussed before, because you get to be Luka and now you're going to win titles.
Right.
But if it's Miami or Dallas and those are two teams, I actually think they might have played it the right way. I would versus just going all in on this year where you're probably not winning the title anyway.
All right, so let me play devil's advocate though. So now Bam Adebayo was a revelation. We agree. He's one of the top 10 young players in the league. I don't think that's a stretch to say. So he says to you, "I want to get paid," and you say, "We're going to wait, and we're trying to wait so you can win a championship with Giannis." And I believe I just learned this yesterday. I did not know this. Rachel Nichols told me that Giannis and Bam have the same agent. I didn't know that. So that's interesting. Yeah. Anyway, so you say, well, we're going to wait. And if you're Bam Adebayo and you almost had your shoulder ripped off and you played through it, are you going to play a whole nother year and risk injury because you're waiting for something that may or may not happen? If you're Bam Adebayo and you're Bam Adebayo's agent, are you really going to let that happen? I think it's a really interesting question.
Well, you also saw Tatum got taken care of. Supermax. Well, Mitchell got taken care of.
Right.
And then who was the third guy that somebody else got taken care of too? Or was it just those two? Either way, he's looking at those two guys and he's like, well, I went against Tatum in a conference finals and I was the best player in that series.
Mm-hmm. So that's the other side of it. And it's, I always used to think, well, these guys, they can gamble on themselves. And this is going way, way back. But I just remember when I was with Sports Illustrated, sitting down with Grant Hill when he was with the Pistons. Was he with the Pistons? I think he was, yeah. And we were talking about, he had all sorts of options. He could opt out. He could gamble for a year, whatever. And he's like, what if I got hurt? That's what happened.
Right.
That's what happened.
Well, so, Bam did get hurt last year.
He did. So
it's
anyway.
recoverable.
Right. So you hope it is. But Grant Hill was never the same, as we all know.
I think the difference for me with this is that Giannis has a chance to be a generational superstar. Right. This 100%. Isn't like rolling the dice with Dwight Howard in 2014 or something. This is the level of KD in 2016. Or if Davis had become a free agent this year. I see it from their side, but I really do think the Lakers put a lot of fear into these other teams, how dominant they were in the bubble, because they were. And if you're just looking at it from afar and you're thinking like, man, as long as those two dudes are healthy, we're probably not beating them. So in a weird way, that adds to why they had such a good offseason. I feel like they scared off the Nuggets and the Heat a little bit. And then the Rockets have completely discombobulated. That was another team in their way. And then the other reason the Lakers win the offseason, and this is sad, but Klay going down just removes the Warriors as a contender, right? They're just out now.
Yeah. And, you wonder if they're out sort of permanently because it's just such a long way back now from the other. Like, this is even more devastating than the ACL tear. There's no worse injury than Achilles. People don't come back the same from it. Ask Wes Matthews, and he probably was the closest one to coming back from it. It's just a devastating injury. And again, it's another year in your prime, which is why they did what they did and went after Kelly Oubre, because they feel like they can squander another year of Draymond and Steph Curry in their prime. They got to try to go for it here for whatever that means.
I don't feel like I'm talking out of school with Steve Kerr here, because we were texting a little bit about it, talking about that 5-year window. He's talked about that publicly, about the miles that they put on those 5 years. And I was saying on my pod last week, I always try to bring everything back to the mid-'80s Celtics if I can, if there's an opportunity. But, I look back at, and you were covering them, 84, 85, 86, 87, the wear and tear, not just all the playoff games, but Casey Jones playing those dudes like 46 minutes in February.
And leaving Reggie Lewis on the bench.
Right. And by the time we got to 88, and that was kind of the end of that 5-year run, that whole team just broke down, everybody. And I do wonder with the Warriors, like, you think Durant breaks down as that 2019 postseason's going. Klay breaks down twice.
Right.
And Draymond does not. Draymond doesn't look athletically as dominant as he did maybe 5 years ago. And you just think, like, are NBA teams meant to have 5-year runs like that? Probably not.
Probably not. And again, that mid-'80s team, as you know, the bench was thin. Whether it was thin because Casey made it that way or they really just didn't, choose to play young players, which was kind of the norm back then. But you're talking about McHale on a broken foot, and they're telling him, you can't play on this foot anymore. You're going to be deformed. Like this will never be right. And, he needs fusion surgery. He won't have it because he's too stubborn. And then Bird, it was the next year he had it wasn't even his back. Remember, he had double heel surgery.
Yeah.
I mean, he only played 8 games, I think, that year. And then Paris,